impressive research demonstrating that, indeed, as Betty says, aspartame clearly is a carcinogen. You know, this is what John Olney has been saying for many years. He and I were on 60 Minutes, and that was his research. Actually, it was sort of a last-minute thing. Initially, they were going to focus on some of my research, but then this more dramatic research was produced by John Olney, correlating aspartame with brain tumors. And the Safridi study done with initially the first study done with rats does demonstrate that, indeed, as we just have been saying, this is carcinogenic.
And this was peer-reviewed by 7 world experts.
This is a very, very reputable medical institute. This was done with thousands of laboratory animals. It is very impressive research, and it demonstrates, as I said, that this substance is carcinogenic.
And also, what I think is so interesting, for a little bit of humor, the European Food Safety Authority comes out and said, because, they were rebutting it, and they said, well, the rats had respiratory disease. And Dr. Safridi came back and he says, but respiratory disease is the dying process, and this was for the lifetime of the rats. And then finally, when we exposed all this, then the head of the European Food Safety Authority, one of the doctors, Dr. Cole, wrote a press release and said, well, we were pressured by industry to hijack science. So even with that confession, nothing was ever done in Europe, although 47 members of Parliament did sign for a ban when Dr. Walton went over and testified.
I'm fascinated, Dr. Walton, how this breaks down and turns into formaldehyde.
Yes.
The rats actually their hair turned yellow from the formaldehyde in that study.
God.
The amounts are small, as the industry says, but the problem is that we lack the capacity to eliminate it, so it is cumulative.
Well, exactly. I mean, they don't understand that if, you may have little amounts of it from a soda or something else, but over time... Over
time, it accumulates, We lack the ability to eliminate formaldehyde.
And, where does it hit people the most, do you think? I mean, does it affect their kidneys, their liver, the retina of the eye?
Well, I think that it affects multiple
brain?
organ systems. Yes, clearly, my research involved the central nervous system,
right.
The seizures, behavioral changes, etc. But in the double-blind study that we did, people did experience a whole range of adverse effects, as I said, from headaches, depressive and panic symptoms. I believe that it does, but not that it causes panic disorder, etc., but it makes vulnerable people feel much, much worse. So there are a whole host of neuropsychiatric problems induced by aspartame. As we're talking about, it's a carcinogenic substance. 2 of the people in my double-blind study developed serious eye problems, and this is something I still feel absolutely terrible about, is that the administrator of our hospital was good enough to become a subject in the study. He was at the time a very, very healthy 43-year-old PhD psychologist, and he developed a retinal detachment, an eye emergency, and he permanently lost the sight in one eye as a result of participating in our study.
Is there anybody within the FDA, Dr. Walton, or you, Betty, who is pushing this to get reviewed and possibly, taken out of the American
products? Many years ago, I did communicate with somebody in the FDA who seemed, I can't even remember her name now, it was a woman physician in the FDA that I was communicating with, and she seemed very, very interested and very eager to be helpful. And then all of a sudden, she wasn't there anymore. I couldn't find her. It was very strange.
Yes, and it show you how they don't want to have anything to do with it now. They have laws. I wrote a citizen's petition to ban it. The law states they must answer in 180 days. Well, it's been 6 years, and they won't answer it. And the reason is that I used their own words about how bad it was, so they can't come up with an answer. So then I filed an amendment on an imminent health hazard, which means they must answer within a week and 10 days, certified mail, and they won't answer that. They serve so above the law that they simply won't touch it. occasionally, like a woman who had a child with a seizure, just really gave it to the FDA in Florida. And finally he says, well, we tried to tell you, everyone many years ago, and nobody listened, so it's not our fault.
Why aren't they using the non-caloric herb stevia instead of this?
Well, here's something interesting about stevia. If it has no additives, it's perfectly safe and a very good product. But, for instance, in Brazil, they add aspartame to it.
No.
Yes. And so now everybody was so happy that that Coca-Cola was going to come around and use stevia. They got this deal with Cargill, but it's not stevia, really. It's now been manipulated or genetically engineered. It's got a new name. And this is the reason why when I met Mike Silver, who's the CEO of Just Like Sugar, today, he made herbs from the Amazon. I said, there's nothing there that's safe for anybody. So that's when he made Just Like Sugar. He says it's so easy. Anybody could have made a safe sweetener. They did not have to use, these chemicals and poisons. And so he made it out of chicory and orange peel. So, there's no excuse for all this. And if they would just leave stevia alone, if it was just
stevia,
green leaf the way that it is, and don't put additives in, it's absolutely,
it would be fine.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when people buy it on the market and they use it, and they are now, is aspartame added to that, or should they read the labels? What's in there?
Well, aspartame is not added to it in the United States that I know of, but we have a Mission Possible Brazil, and they told me, because I was writing about it, they said down here we've got aspartame in it. We verified that. So I tell people, you've got to read labels these days. First of all, you get something with aspartame in it. It's got MSG, which has a synergistic and additive effect, and you've got all these color dyes and everything else. I tell victims, look, if you want to be safe, it's like Dr. Roberts says, when in doubt, throw it out. Stay away from processed foods. So much is hidden in there that aspartame victims are chemically hypersensitive, and so they think they're allergic to things. But like Dr. Blaylock says, he said, understand the reactions. They're not allergic. They're toxic like arsenic and cyanide. We're talking about a poison.
If you had your wish list, Dr. Walton, what would you like to happen here?
Oh, I'd like to. First, years ago, I said that people just needed to be educated and informed. Now I believe that it is so hazardous, it needs to be banned.
Totally. Immediately?
Yes.
In fact, I was talking to Dr. Deagle one day, and he told me, he says, depleted uranium is the most poisonous thing, but he said aspartame is worse because of its ubiquitous nature in foods. It's in everything. It's in prescription drugs. It's in the very drugs used to treat the problems. Somebody has a headache on aspartame, they go to a doctor, they put them on Maltex. It has aspartame in it. You remember me saying about how aspartame interacts with L-Dopa, so they make Parcopa and put aspartame in it.
Now, can one go online and search aspartame/drugs to see what drugs have aspartame? A lot of people are on different kind of pharmaceuticals. They probably want to know.
Well, yes. Actually, I think if you call, I know I did, the health department and ask them for a list of them, they usually will help you. Otherwise, you've got to know the drug. You have to look at each drug in order to see if it's in it.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment with more on Coast to Coast AM.